Welcome back to another Glass with Waterford Estate. This is a very exciting episode. Today we are joined by our tasting room head manager. We've got Werner here with us today. How are you doing today, Werner?
I'm doing very well, and yourself?
Very well, thank you. Let's jump right in. You've got an amazing story coming through the winelands. I've had the privilege of hearing it a couple of times. But yeah, tell us how you started and how you actually landed up here at Waterford.
So it is a long one. It actually goes back 26 years. So I started working in the wine industry, first job on a weekend as a store boy, carrying out boxes of wine to people's cars when they purchased it. So here I am, this little Afrikaans guy sitting in the back of a storeroom, reading these boxes with these really fancy French names on it, like Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon, and I couldn't even pronounce it. So I was sort of introduced to this world about wine and different cultivars and different sort of red wine and white wine, etc. As I was carrying it out to their the boxes to their cars, and sort of getting to understand, this liquid that people enjoy. So from there off, when I had a gap year, all my school friends went to Europe to work in London as a barman or security. I was sitting on a tractor outside Stellenbosch on a very old established wine farm, pruning, harvesting, making wine in the cellar, dragging pipes around and connecting, pumping one tank over to the other, mixing yeasts. And that's where I actually got to learn more about the making and the styles of wine. And then just from there off, I decided to go into tourism and focusing on wine tourism. And has my journey started through working with numerous restaurants and wine farms, as sort of a food and beverage sort of component.
Oh, nice. Very cool. And I know you love, obviously with your education coming up in the wine industry, I know you have a real love to try get the education of wine out, which is absolutely amazing. Hopefully we're going to get some people educated on the variety Chardonnay. So actually what we are going to be drinking today on our beautiful podcast is our 2018 vintage of the Estate Chardonnay, a single vineyard wine actually, and something that should actually go with, or we should actually mention, we shouldn't definitely not, is our 2019 vintage got the top 10 Chardonnays in the country. It's a beautiful award to win, so look out for that one, everyone. We are very excited for that to come out sometime soon. But this 2018 vintage is definitely an amazing vintage for us. And Chardonnay as a variety, it's actually quite a young vine in the country, I believe. It's got quite an interesting story, a bit of a sketchy story, I believe. Yeah. But yeah, how did Chardonnay come into South Africa?
So basically in the South African wine industry, 1970s and back, there wasn't actually a lot of influence or new material that was brought into the country. The South African wine industry was basically managed by, for example, the big cooperative groups like KWV, and many of the farmers or growers were actually then told which grape cultivars they should work with. Yet there were some of the winemakers, with the likes of Dani de Wet and Jan Boerland Coetzee, having known that there are these wonderful varietals up in France, and Chardonnay being one of them, actually ended up smuggling.
They smuggled the wine.
They smuggled the plant material into South Africa and started planting it here without having sort of the controlling body at that time to go through those sort of red tape and sort of loops. And they started releasing Chardonnays, and they got into trouble for it.
Yeah, they definitely get into a bit of trouble for doing something like that.
Then they started realizing that we actually have this wonderful growing environment to make really good Chardonnays in South Africa.
Oh, fantastic. I can't believe it's actually a bit of a rebel.
Yeah, it is a rebel wine.
Yeah, definitely a rebel wine. Well, I'm so glad you mentioned now the growing conditions and everything like that. How are we able to grow Chardonnay on a vineyard in Stellenbosch? I mean, the Heidelberg Mountain, we're known for our Cabernet Sauvignons. How can a varietal like Chardonnay do so well here and make such high quality wines for us?
So it's basically, as you look at the environment, the terroir really of Waterford itself, and having the Heidelberg Mountain that sort of really spurs between the cool ocean breezes coming from the False Bay and the Stellenbosch Mountain range. The Chardonnay is tucked into that sort of fold of the Stellenbosch Mountain in the upper Blaarklippen. Now that's towards the east. So as the sun comes over the Stellenbosch Mountain range, it's almost always in the shade from early morning till late morning and sometimes even early afternoon. So it's a very cool area. And then also the soil profile being very much sort of red clay based, we call it Hutton, also big deposits of granite. So it creates this very little unique growing area within Waterford itself that makes a style wine that has that wonderful sort of richness, yet fine finesse and minerality.
Interesting. So there's actually a little microclimate out on our farm.
Yep.
Wow, we're really lucky to have that, I must admit. But I believe these vines, some of the oldest in the country.
That's right. So when we're talking about the likes of Jan Boeland and Dani de Wet, when they start smuggling in these, cuttings from France, that was 1970s, 1980s. The Waterford Chardonnay is registered to be planted in 1988. So it makes it for one of the oldest Chardonnay blocks on the farm. In fact, and we like to joke about it, that it is older than Waterford itself.
Yeah, we only founded in 98, definitely is 10 years older than...
That's 10 years older than Waterford itself.
Holy cow. Yeah, now an older vine, how does that actually benefit towards making a high quality wine?
So, especially with older vineyards, the plant itself can actually start establishing itself within that soils, getting up that nutrients, getting up the minerals and so forth, and really sort of adapt to the environment where it grows in. So, yes, older vineyards will perhaps start yielding perhaps less grapes, but the grapes that really do come out from it has fantastic quality to it. So it's that whole saying of quantity over quality. And here it definitely have, as the vineyards get a little bit older, they get more mature, the plant itself, and it might not just go out just to producing tonnage of grapes, but it's all about the quality you get from it.
Okay, well, I guess, with wine, the older the better. If it's not just your bottle in your cellar somewhere, or actually the vine's in the dirt, I always want something a little bit more older. It's going to make yourself enjoy the wine a little bit more, make your winemaker's job a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Cool. Let us talk about the wine that's sitting in front of us right now. How are we actually making our Chardonnay, and how does that benefit the terroir that we have and kind of the direction Chardonnay is going for the future?
So, yes, Chardonnay in South Africa has gone through a tremendous evolution. From stylistically, from this very big and buttery and oaky styles of Chardonnays, there was a phase where we had sort of unwooded Chardonnays. But it seems like in South Africa, it's now trying to get more of a balance between very heavily wooded and the freshness of the wine itself. But ultimately, what it's all about is that we want to showcase the quality of the fruit from the farm. So we never want to lay the wine with a lot of wood components. We want a lot of the natural flavors and the freshness and that minerality to show through. So the Chardonnay, having it sort of hand-picked, great quality control that comes into the cellar, but we do a barrel fermentation on the wine. So the wine itself ferments within the French oak barrels. About sort of 24% of that is only new oak.
It's a very subtle new oak.
That's right. Yeah. So from there off, you basically work with a much more of an integrated, lighter wood component rather than very strong, aggressive wood flavors. And as the wines mature in there for about 9 months, as well, you get this beautiful, subtle sort of layering of oaky and a slight toastiness that comes through with the wine. But because the quality of the grape and shall we say, the natural wine aspect actually has so much flavor of the fruit and also a bit of an acidity to it, it just basically creates this wonderful package of having this wine with this nice little mineral freshness, flintiness, fruit component, and then almost on the aftertaste, a little send-off, you'll have a little bit of a creamy butteriness on the wine.
Sure. Elegantly put, Werner, I must admit. I can almost taste it now, sitting here with the glass in front of me. But Chardonnay has always been referred to as a bit more of a food wine. So how does something like the Waterford Chardonnay pair with a meal?
Yes, definitely. All of the wines in regards to the components that they have in the restaurant matches very, very well. So because you're working with that wonderful acidity, yet again, and a slight richness to it as well, it will definitely go with slightly more richer white meat dishes. So you think of something like the pork, or a bit of a pork neck, maybe a pork belly, and wonderful sort of richer fish. Not necessarily hake, but things of kabeljauw, kingklip, yellowtail, etc. Right. So the nice little richer, more fish dishes that, because of the complexity, because you've had acidity and that fruit component and its slight texture that comes through with the wine, it's a great food wine with that of, for example, fish and pork.
Oh, phenomenal. Very interesting stuff to know. And now, obviously, being such a winey yourself, growing up, pretty much learning about wine on the go, I'm sure you've got a phenomenal story for us when it comes to Chardonnay. Please enlighten us.
So, younger, I was living and working in the Klein Karoo and the Robertson Montague area, which is also very, very well known for its Chardonnays. I was doing wine tasting for a society group in Montague in the Karoo KWV Art Gallery. And we're doing this blind tasting and we're tasting through the wines and so forth. And at the end of the tasting, we're done and we're sitting around and we're having a chat. And I just decided, you know what? I'm going to get up, I'm going to grab a couple of bottles of wine, and I'm going to rally up the people and we're going to stand in front of different art pieces and do a wine and art pairing.
Yeah, all the senses included.
That's the thing. So it's a nice sensorial sort of environment. And the Chardonnay was always a nice little interesting wine that struck to me because it had that complexity, because you have that fruit, the acidity and the roundness to it. And just picking out an art piece that will go visually with what I'm tasting sort of on my palate. Again, if you look at it, even like if I had to think about it back then to now, how I would compare this to an art piece from either sort of post-impressionism, where you have big bold colors and richness, but it has a lot of finesse to it as well. Pierre Bonnard will be sort of a good example of that, with that sort of painting style that he has. So it's a bit of a quirky story where I had to start thinking about wine is not just something that I'm drinking; it's something that I'm experiencing.
Yeah, the full experience
That's
of the bottle. Wow, incredible.
And you can play on that. You can play on things like wine and music, and how sort of you pair that, because it's a feeling.
Yeah, the experience.
And bringing that all together. Yeah,
that's an incredible story. That's fantastic. So you've been around the wine industry now for a good couple of years, not mentioning your age here. You've experienced so many different wineries, different wine farms, tasting rooms, restaurants, things like that. What makes Waterford so unique?
It's definitely the location and also the people. So in regards to our location, I grew up in the Helderberg, Somerset West Strand area, so I know this area quite well. So if I talk about the terroir and sort of the climate, immediately that makes it stands out, where we are sort of halfway between, let's say, the coast side and halfway between central Stellenbosch side. So we have that component of slightly more warmth and slightly more cooler aspects that play a role. Our slight sort of footing on the folds of the Stellenbosch Mountains and on the foot of the Helderberg Mountain, giving that sort of contrast of sort of soil profiles that we have, where you'll have a lot of sort of rocks, pebbles, clay, on the other side, but more granite components that's coming through as well. So there's a lot of diversity that actually comes in this relatively small estate. That adds that sort of complexity and a lot of aspects to work with on a wine to make it unique. And then from there off, there is also the aspect of the people and how we approach in regards to our mindset to Waterford. My team, it's very much a family, and we all stand together and we all live really the Waterford lifestyle. This is who we are and this is what we do. So it's a very natural and it's a very sort of comforting environment for us to be involved with and work at, and it's a phenomenal brand to be a part of. And then also, like I said, the complexities that we add to it, it's never really dull. It's never really, just, it's another Chardonnay or it's another Cabernet Sauvignon. It's the Waterford Cabernet, it's the Waterford Chardonnay. And because of these components of where we are and how we treat the wines and the feeling that you get, by experiencing the Waterford lifestyle while drinking Waterford wines, just makes it an amazing place.
It's phenomenal. I really enjoyed that.
Sorry.
No, that was perfect.
We had a bit of a...
So you've now been with Waterford for some time, 2 years now. Fantastic. Thanks for clearing that up for me. I'm sure in that time you've got a favorite memory and a favorite kind of place here at the farm. What, if you reach back in the archives of your mind, what kind of springs out to you as going, you know what, that was something to worth mention?
I would say It's spending time with my team. My students that work here at Waterford, we have a very, very tight-knit sort of relationship with each other. We work hard together. We all, share this experience that every day with our guests and so forth. And we do like to sort of also go out on the farm. So every now and then, we actually have a full moon hike where we, after work, we all get ready, pack in some snacks, bottle of wine too, and then we walk up from the tasting room up to a very special spot on the farm, which is the red wine deck. And as we all get together there, we open up our bottles of wine, we have our snacks on the table, and just sharing a great time together at Waterford with this beautiful big moon that just sort of comes up from behind the Stellenbosch mountain range. It makes it a very unique and a very special environment for us to, to get to know each other more and sort of really solidify that relationships that we have as a team.
It's a wonderful team building experience. Yeah. Definitely something that I'm sure will stick with a lot of people for many, many years, and a beautiful place on the farm. Werner, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It has been an absolute treat having you here. The information has been amazing. Your stories, the knowledge on the wine. I'm sure all the listeners and myself, we are feeling more enriched by it. So yeah, hopefully we have you again on the podcast sometime soon.
Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a bit of my wine passion. There we go.